All right, and we're now live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Blue Carbon webinar.
Hello, hello.
We'll give everybody a few minutes to arrive, but please get comfortable while that happens. Grab a drink, a snack, anything else, and let's get ready. So if you've been following our webinar series, you know that traditionally we've been doing a lot of webinars on actually green carbon, so anything that has to do with the forest. So today for us is a very unusual and exciting subject because we're going to talk about about things not forest related, so the water and the blue carbon. And we've got some really cool speakers lined up for you guys. Hopefully you are as excited as we are, because I'm very excited. I'm gonna learn a lot of new things today. Mario and Luca have already blown my mind with some of the stats previously. So hopefully it's going to be as mind blowing for you as for me. And while we're giving everybody a chance to arrive, as usual, let's do a quick warm up, and please put in the chat the country that you're joining us from. You can even add the city. Oh, we already have North Carolina, USA. Well, I'm based in France, in the south of France, close to the water, so blue carbon is very relevant for me. Guys, please make a round of where everyone's based.
I'm in Portugal.
I'm in London.
Zagreb, Croatia. Sadly, not at the coastline, but I'm thinking about it. I want to be there, so it's almost the same.
From Venice, Italy. About water, I hope it won't rain too much. Otherwise, it would be a problem for me to get home after work.
Well, but you've got some water taxes, right?
Yeah, somehow we always manage, but still.
All right, let's call out a couple of countries. Guys, you're pretty active in the chat. Thank you. So we've got Germany, we've got Sweden, we've got UK, Canada, Korea, Spain, Washington DC. Hi, I used to live there for almost 7 years. Denmark, Chile, Ghana, Spain again, Zimbabwe, India, Sweden, Canada, Belgium, Brazil, Peru, Bharat, Ghana again, Indonesia, India, South Africa. Guys, we're very global today, just as usual. We really appreciate everybody joining from different locations, especially when it's not the most convenient time for you in the day. So anybody who's in the Southeast Asia, thank you for joining. We know it's late for you. And everybody on the East or even West Coast in the US and Canada, we know it's early for you. So thank you again. All right, we'll wait 1 more minute and we'll kick it off. So we'll start with a couple of quick surveys just for you guys to also get a better idea of what the content is going to be and who you all are in the audience. And then I'm gonna turn over to my co-host Carlos. Oh, sorry, I should have said I'm Ollie from Orbify. If you've been coming to our webinars, you're already used to seeing our faces. At least mine, Carlos's, and Ollie's, because we've done a couple of past webinars all together. Oh, we've got Colombia as well. All right, guys, I'm gonna turn over to Carlos. He's gonna intro our guest speakers, and he's also gonna launch the surveys.
Super. Thank you, Olia. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As Olia said, it's time for first poll. I think you guys can already see in your screen. So please engage with that. If you can see your role here, please drop in the chat. Jasper, nice. Crazy.
So developers started to vote fast, and then NGOs are now kicking in.
Yeah. Nice. So in the meantime, guys, I would like to introduce our guest speakers today. So thank you so much, first of all, for our speakers here, Luca and Mario and Oliver. So Luca is the co-founder of the See the Change. See the Change is an innovative, social-oriented startup which operates in the blue economy by offering sustainability services for individual and companies, safeguarding marine ecosystems and supporting local communities. So welcome, Luca. Thank you so much for being here. Mario Spadina. Mario, hope I pronounced your last name correctly. So Mario is the CEO of Sequest. Sequest is a great partner of Orbify. It's a company specialized in water quality monitoring, particularly in high and challenging coastal waters. One of our projects that we are doing together with Mario is the Spill Alert project that I think most of you already know. So thank you, Mario, for being here. Welcome again. And Oliver Levers, Oli, thank you again. Oli, I think Oli is a familiar face for those who attended our previous webinars. Oli is our Earth observation engineer or specialist here today, and he'll be sharing some of his knowledge today with everyone. So thank you again, Oli, and welcome again. Super, guys, thank you so much for engaging with the first poll, and we have one more before kicking off. Let's share right now. Okay, what do you believe is the most significant challenge in blue carbon conservation and research? Cool. If you guys want to share your thoughts on the chat, feel free to do this.
Seems everybody are interested in, but not in buying.
Speaking of the chat, as usual, the format of the webinar is presentations followed by Q&A. So each speaker is going to go through their presentations, and there will be a Q&A session available for them afterwards. So once the speaker starts going through their presentation, you guys can drop the questions in the chat. We'll go all over them after the presentation is over, but please feel free to drop them as the presentation goes, because we'll be able to take care of them afterwards.
Yeah, super. And now I think it's time to start, right? All right, Luca. Sorry, Mario will start, right? Yeah, Mario, stage is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Olia. Thank the organizers.
Yeah,
I think he probably meant to share his screen, accidentally exited the stage. I think he's getting back on.
But that's a nice thing to crack the ice, a little bit of ejecting yourself from the role play. So guys, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so once again, thank you, Olia, Carlos, and everybody in charge of organization this lovely webinar. I've been following you for quite some time. So, okay, so just a little bit of heads up before we start. Based on the fact that I do know what our distinguished colleagues will give in their talks, I prepared slightly, let's say, fundamental presentation. Okay, so in the case that the audience is broad in general in terms of qualifications and areas of interest. So I will give not scientific grade presentation, but let's say a slight introduction into subject of blue carbon and practical example of one such a thing. So my name is Mario Spadina. I am CEO and co-founder of Seacross. We are a Croatian company that really specializes in coastal waters monitoring, where we in particular even monitor seagrasses, meadows, and so forth. We have been working with Orbify on Spill Alert project for oil spill detection. Besides that, in our portfolio, let me just give a quick introduction of the company and then we will move forward. Besides that, we are specialized in black water tunnel discharges of large vessels, monitoring in general state of the aquatic ecosystems, as well as floating debris detection and seabed mapping. All in all, we have our own ESG and CSRD, maritime spatial planning and marine protected areas templates for data outputting. So we really are in that niche. Okay, so this is really what we do. Now I stole the sketch from Mr. Arvind there for the presentation of how Earth observation value chain is done. So thank him very much for that. I stole it, by the way. So what we do, basically, we analyze satellite imagery. Okay, and then what client sees in the end is monitoring service and surveillance, and typically reporting schematics. But what the client doesn't see at all is all the things that we do in back processing, and that includes auxiliary data analysis, as well as our own data collection on site, and so forth and so forth. But what they get, for example, is just a one-stop shop where they have the ESG reports, or for example, on marine resources, or feasibility studies for marine protected areas, and so forth. Now, the story of the day is a blue carbon. Now, blue carbon, if you just go and Google, I mean, there are a lot of professionals. I saw that there are around 30% of participants at this webinar who are experts in environmental sciences, at least they claim. So you will very well understand the fact that definition is important. Why is it important? Because it leads us to the way how we quantify things. So simple browsing on the Google would say that basically all the carbon stored in a water column from the bottom to the surface is a blue carbon. But then again, there are different definitions. For example, and we will focus on these ones here, okay? Not because I like Wikipedia, but just because it's very convenient. Basically, it gives the most focus on I would say, the centers of the biomass, which are in certain areas, mangroves of coastal waters, for example, or seagrass, okay? So this is very nice. And why did I start the presentation with this? Because it gives us a standing point from which we can quantify things. So basically, in the last couple of, not only years, but I would say a decade, Earth observation as a way of monitoring has been heavily studied and even given to the industrial scale of blue carbon estimates. And I will not now go into details about how it is done practically and so on. This can be another webinar or a discussion afterwards. But in principle, blue carbon via Earth observation is somewhat already on industrial scale, but somewhat still, I would say, in an early development phase, which is why I use the allegory of the heaven, hell, and purgatory. Why? Because, I mean, Earth observation, for all its deficiencies, has a big benefit of being large area, frequent monitoring, and completely non-invasive method, which is very important, and it has the lowest carbon emissions during the lifespan of the projects, if you want, or the lifespan of the product development. At the same time, I mean, it's somewhere in between, which means because when you monitor certain areas, okay, which we will show on images just in next slides, you see the 2D picture, okay, but you don't see the water column, you don't see the height, you don't see many of the things. So it's very nice for a qualitative assessment, but quantitative assessment sometimes need specific models that are constantly being developed, mostly by scientific community. But some of them are already done for industrial scale, some of them are in development. And why are we in the hell? Because I deal with this hell on daily basis in our R&D, on what one would say research, one would say R&D, it depends on the nomenclature. It's because, for example, when you have a monitoring of seagrass as a typical representative of blue carbon, a colleague will discuss later mangroves, but principle is the same. Basically, you see on the image very nice the patterns of the seagrass, the meadow, the patches, and everything, and it will be very well qualified. But what is difficult to assess is the height of the plants or the vegetation at the seabed, which then complicates the determination of the biomass. So the total carbon is an estimate, and in the end, what basically every approach yields is a ground proofing mechanism, which has already been done in many areas, many case studies, some of which are yet to be done. So it costs a little bit of money. That's a problem for me as a company who deals with that. So now the practical example. For example, I am currently here in Zagreb, although I wished I've been now at the sea, okay, but it's cold, so you don't get to the beach anymore. But in general, the Adriatic Sea is a very nice sea. We share it with Slovenia, Italy, Montenegro, and Albania on the south. And it is in most of the parts, it's very transparent and shallow water. So it's very good, I would say, case for the Earth observation to kick in for the seagrass monitoring. But of course, seagrass comes, for example, seagrass, it comes in a few species, densities, and so on, which is why, of course, additional tools are sometimes needed. Again, I feel that I have a responsibility to share a little bit of the know-how, a little bit of the knowledge, done not only by myself but from the scientific community. So I will give only the requirements or the recipe how to do things, which is nice for the guys who describe themselves as a developer in the product for blue carbon. And basically, what one needs to always watch out for when dealing with the near shallow and transparent coastal waters is the fact that bathymetry needs to be very well known in a high resolution, and that the fact that low turbidity waters, basically the turbidity varies. So that can sometimes be problematic, but it can be done. So the recipe for the first time approachers would be for a qualitative measures. This is the strict recipe downstairs, down here. You can go, either you study macro location, for example, the 1,000 square kilometers, or the micro location of few square kilometers or 1 square kilometers. One would need to adopt the resolution of the payload, optical payload that they use. For example, for macro location, Sentinel-2, Landsat 8 can be used to give a very good destination level qualitative assessment, whereas for the micro locations such as bays and so on, typically what we do, we need to go in very high resolution, and because the patches are small. So typically, I will give you a practical case of Island Korčula, one of our clients who agreed to disclose this data. Okay, these are location 1, 2, 3, and 5, and 5 locations on Croatian. So they are really interested in, when it comes to monitoring seagrass Posidonia oceanica, they are really interested in distinguishing anthropogenic versus naturally occurring events, coastal urbanization effects, pollution emission, and I would say mechanic damage or stress on the seabed done by anchoring sites and nautic tourism. So for them, we are monitoring, for example, destinational level, which we talked before, and then micro locations within that. So, for example, in the intelligence layer provided, when we analyze very high resolution data, basically we identified the smaller patches and so on, and then what we do is continuously see the negative effect of the nautic tourism. Basically, when you throw an anchor in a Posidonia patch, when you take the anchor out, you pull it off, and it's done. It doesn't recover that easily. And then there were some additional effects, as for example, sewage water outputs around them, where the Posidonia grew even better, mostly due to the fact that there are a lot of nutrients in the area. So they were quite, on the first glance, contradictory findings. But client is happy, we got paid, so I guess that's done. So I see now that my time is almost, I would say, not gone, but close to an end. So with that, I would, for the particular Posidonia case, I need to thank Ruđer Bošković Institute, which we are really building on a subject, and with the clients for national parks and natural parks, which have the demand to monitor such a thing. So they are our trusted partners, and I would like to thank them with that. I leave the floor to questions, and you can guys go ahead and ask whatever you want. So yeah, thank you.
We have our first question, Mario. What is the ground for the revenue in this project?
What is the
ground for revenue in this project?
Okay. So typically, we charge our pricing model basically follows the structure of the frequency of monitoring, and then the base area of interest, and then we scale. Typically, I cannot go into details of the contract, but it's on order of magnitude of let's say 80 euros per unit area, and then we scale. Okay, so typically that. Other thing is, this is because one needs to understand this is the monitoring which can be done, I would say, not continuously with lag, which is less expensive, of course, because you have historical data and so on. For example, in continuous surveillance, the costs are much higher because you need to go and be instantaneous and so on. But this is a bit cheaper. Okay, so we have another question.
What are the key aspects to monitor?
So the key aspects to monitor for us have been identified as the edges of the patches, and really to make distinguish the edges of the patches, because the edges are the things that can be seen by imagery as a changing parameter. Okay, and that is an indicator of the damage. So, for example, the resolution which we use, basically, I mean, on destinational level, we use, as I said, medium resolution satellites, open source, they are sufficient, Sentinel-2 and Landsat data, whereas for the practical commercial services, for our clients, we use, I would say, resolution less than 3x3, 1 meter resolutions and around that. Typically, depends on the pricing, depends on the requirements of the clients, and it depends on the fact to approach the civil commercial licenses for the data. That's how it is done.
Which satellites do you use for high resolution or very high resolution?
So basically, we combine pretty much every possible provider there. Is it a Planet or is it a Maxar? So basically, but it really comes down to what client needs and what data are available and in what time frame. Okay, because that's very important. For example, Croatia.
Okay,
Croatia is not, I would say, attractive subject to certain data providers. Okay, because it's small market. Okay, even though the coastline is large. So typically, historical data on most of the providers did not exist. So we had to make, in fact, advance payment to study in advance so that we can even approach clients. So that was a bit tricky. But yeah, let's say we gambled business-wise. But in fact, that was also one of the, I would say, problems. But I know very well for the certain areas of the world, daily coverage and sub-daily coverage is available in high-resolution satellite imagery. So that's quite nice. I don't know where are you guys from when you ask the question, but before designing a commercial service out of that, check the databases, are they readily available? What is the flight frequency overview and so on, because it really tailor-made the costs, and it really gives you the, I would say, negotiating power. Okay, that's really important because you don't want to lose the money, and the data are expensive.
Yep, especially for very high resolution.
Yeah.
I love this. Next question. Are you looking into marine biodiversity credits for monetization of your work? If so, what are your thoughts on it?
So marine biodiversity credits. So with all the credits now, I'm happy that European Union adopted. Okay, it was a bit lagging behind, but so the future market I envision, I fully plan to use, but locally and extended domestic market, which are our scale-up phase market, regional-wise, are still do not really consider. Okay. So, but so far, no. It's in our plan for the expansion phase for the 2025 and so on. But of course, with a proper strategic partner, and if there is a chance of building opportunity, maybe somebody in the audience, please, of course, contact. We can make it piloting, no problem at all.
Can you advise on key technical additionality for Blue Ocean project?
Can you advise on key for the Blue?
Key technical additionality for Blue Ocean project.
So I don't know about the Blue Ocean project. Let me just take a quick glance. Okay. Yes. In fact, I do not really understand the question. Can you advise on a key? Do I give now?
I think so.
Advice, Or
so
you
I
want
think
me
it's the
to
overall question of additionality when it comes to carbon credit projects, and I think maybe they meant blue carbon project instead of blue ocean. So how do you, I think the question is, how do you judge the additionality when it comes to blue carbon projects?
So I mean, basically for the blue carbon projects, if we are to put it on industrial scale, we don't have other option than combining earth observation techniques with the other techniques. Basically, as soon as it is local, basically it will stay expensive. So, but industrial scale requires, of course, lower costs. So basically, the compromise is somewhere in between. And in particular, I would say utilization on both different tools of remote sensing and some unmanned vessels. That would be for me the biggest strength.
Okay, there is one more question. We'll take one more question, then we'll switch to Luca's presentation, because otherwise we'll not be respecting the time. So, and don't worry, everyone, if there are still questions left, they'll be answered in writing afterwards. So no questions left unanswered. So what are the key aspects to assess the required parameters?
So it's a location. When I say it's a location specific, one needs to be careful, because I mean, we people are different. So is the sea. There is one sea in the planet, but it's very treacherous. Depending on where you are, it has a different turbidity, salinity, the depth, shallowness, different amounts of biomass in the ecosystem. So, but for industrial scale, scientific grade, I would say coarse grinding process, it means removing some of the aspects, would be that few parameters are the key, which is the depth, bathymetry, the roughness or the hydromorphology of the seabed, and of course the content of the water column. Okay, because for the assessment in typically earth observation for the seabed, you need to know what is in the water column. You need to know how transparent is the sea, and what is the total consumption of the carbon distributed vertically. So these are the main. And then there are dozens others. I think researchers here in the audience are now very angry at me for simplifying that much, but industrial scale for the carbon market, that doesn't need much more than that. Blue carbon, market.
Thank you, Mario. Diego, we've noted your question regarding the mangroves. We actually, so Ol is doing a presentation on mangroves at the end, so he'll take your question afterwards. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. We're gonna now switch to the next presentation, which is Luca Barani.
Good luck, Luca.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Mario. Great presentation. So, give me, sorry. Okay, full screen. So, good afternoon, morning, evening to everyone. And I really would like first to thank Orbify team for the opportunity to be speaking here in this webinar. It's always a pleasure for us to be talking and discussing about this topic. So how my short presentation will be? Well, I will first give you a short introduction about what we are doing as See the Change. Then, as Mario did, I will switch just a little bit with some scientific definition about blue carbon credits. And then we're gonna analyze some market features about blue carbon, the institution point of view, and we're gonna go on a specific case about what we are doing in Venice. So as I said, See the Change is an Italian innovative startup. We are pretty young. We are born almost 2 years ago. And our core aim is to link the private sector with the protection of marine ecosystem. Even though we are pretty young and 2023 was our first year on the market, we managed already to develop some very high quality collaboration. For example, we have been part of several acceleration programs, one with the MIT Design X here in Venice, another one with Climate Kick, Blue Invest from the European Commission, And right now we are doing a social types program from INCO and google.org. And we are recognized as a startup from the University of Bologna. So our value proposition to our final clients, so companies, is to help them to reach their sustainability goals through the preservation of marine ecosystem. How do we do it? Well, we do it offering services that are needed to companies, such as carbon neutrality, brand reputation, CSR, HR, and our open innovation lab that is needed to generate, let's say, new positive impact project connected to marine ecosystem. And we match these needs from companies with climate projects that generate positive impact to marine ecosystem. So, as I was saying before, right now, just some short definition about blue carbon. As Mario before me was saying, there are plenty online, and I just picked the one that to me are the, let's say, the best, the one I like the most. So blue carbon is overall the carbon captured by world ocean and coastal ecosystem. And when it comes to carbon credits, with our team, we rearrange a little bit another definition, because actually, even though data and research about blue carbon is still at its very early stage, there are plenty of ecosystem in the sea that with different dynamics and mechanisms are capable of absorbing and storing carbon. So for our team, blue carbon credits are those credits generated by the growth and conservation of carbon absorbing marine carbon sinks. So which are these ecosystems? Here I put some, as I was saying, research and data about the topic are still at the early stage, so almost month by month are changing. But as you can see, there is already quite a big number of ecosystems that potentially at least could generate blue carbon through a conservation or growth project. What we do is working on a project which is based on macroalgae and phytoplankton conservation in Venice. And even though each ecosystem work a little bit differently, this image could represent, let's say, an overall mechanism for blue carbon. This ecosystem, basically, they absorb carbon through photosynthesis, and then they release oxygen in the air, and they stock in the seafloor carbon. What is really interesting, for example, in Venice, is that macroalgae and phytoplankton in this in Venice Lagoon are doing at least 2 cycles of photosynthesis per year. That means they are quite more efficient than, for example, trees in absorbing CO2 emission. So why is it important to invest and use a tool such as blue carbon? Well, first, because the sea and oceans are absorbing almost the 40% of carbon dioxide that is generated each year by our economic system. And due to climate change, the capacity of this ecosystem to absorb CO2, it's reducing each year. So we need to support the ocean to support us. Second, because it's proved by several research that investing in marine ecosystem protection generates quite a lot of benefit if we consider not just environmental, but also social and economical benefit to the local community. And last but not least, because according to to a study from Deloitte that I really suggest you, it's called A Drop in the Ocean. Each year, there is a gap between the needs of ocean ecosystem conservation needs and what actually our society is providing. And this gap, it's around $150 billion per year. So what about the market? Well, I know in the most of you maybe already know, but for who don't, the blue carbon credits are are to be considered inside the voluntary carbon market, which is growing pretty fast and which is expected to grow, let's say, exponentially in the next year. They are considered to be a natural climate solution. And I found this data really interesting. If we manage somehow to provide the correct conservation program for each natural ecosystem, blue carbon included, they could mitigate almost 12 gigatons of CO2 per year. So just following what nature is already doing. And as I was saying, the market is still at its early stage, but it's already possible to somehow have some scenario about the potential value of the overall market, which is around $10 billion. Also, overall, even though it's not possible, let's say, to have a specific trend about the price, the global price for blue carbon, early research showed that usually the final client, let's say, or customer, are kind of willing to pay a little bit more for blue carbon than for other type of carbon credits. And to me, that's really a great news, because with, of course, a bigger, higher availability of money, we would be able as a society to internalize way more economic externalities generated by our economic system. So what institutions think about blue carbon? Well, more than 50 countries have already recognized them in their national determined contribution within the Paris Agreement. And about countries, I really suggest you to have a look at Costa Rica case, which to me it's the most interesting case at country level so far about strategy for blue carbon. But of course, I am open to discussion about it. And the European Union is investing quite a lot of money, and especially in the next year will do even more, because they see blue carbon as a tool to generate, to develop a sustainable blue economy. And of course, they are recognized also by the World Economic Forum. So what Sea the Change does with blue carbon? Well, we include them in one of our services, which is called Blue Carbon Neutrality. This is, let's say, a typical path to get to blue carbon neutrality, following the guidelines from UN. So what we do, for example, with a company is to measure some CO2 emission, then we define generated by some activities of the company. We generate a plan to reduce them, and we offset those excess emissions that, at least in the short term, we cannot reduce. And then we really put a lot of focus on the last part of this, let's say, label, which is communication and engagement, because we really believe it's also one of our mission to raise more awareness among people about this topic. So with more details, what we are doing is we are working with this project in Venice. We choose Venice not just because of its really well-known fragility when it comes to climate change related issues, but also because the University of Padova, with some first estimate, shows how much more efficient this ecosystem can be in absorbing CO2 emission with respect to, for example, tropical forest. And that's why, to me, it's really important that we invest in the preservation and conservation of this very valuable ecosystem. And let's say, with getting into more details about the project, as I said before, in the Venice Lagoon, in a small slide, let's say, of Venice Lagoon, where we are working. Macroalgae and phytoplankton, they absorb carbon emission and they stock carbon. Thanks to satellite data and the equilibrium between fresh water and salt water, we can, let's say, manage some variables, especially the rate of acidification of the water and the temperature of the water. And so we can help this ecosystem to keep doing what they have done for hundreds of years. The approach we follow when it comes to blue carbon, it's based on 3 pillars: the positive impact. Indeed, when we speak about blue carbon credit, it's not just about emission. This project, the project connected with blue carbon, they can generate a really wide range of ecosystem benefit. For example, they contribute to avoid coastal erosion. They improve the quality of water, they improve the rate of biodiversity in the area, and they can provide available new form of income for the local community. So our mission is also to measure this type of ecosystem benefit. We really believe in accessibility as well, because as I said before, we think raising awareness about the topic is the key. And so, for example, with all our clients, we are bringing their stakeholders into the place where this process happen. And with environmental guide, we explain people why it's important to finance such type of action. And for example, next summer, we will launch the first experiential tourism path that will bring, especially probably international tourists, to the valley, the Lagoon Valley, where these credits are generated. And then, last but not least, it's about the certification. Of course, right now in the market, there are plenty of certification, and there will be always more. Our approach is not just to work with those most recognized and famous brand of certification, but we go really into the detail and the technicality of the certification to analyze and see if, let's say, the numbers they put make actually sense or not. So thanks to our work, we, of course, contribute at least to those 3 SDGs. And, of course, everything we do is also connected to new European legislation, and especially with the new standard that were released this summer by the European Union. So I hope this presentation was helpful for you, and it was a really great pleasure for me. So thanks for your attention, and please, for any question or just to be in touch, send me an email. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, I think everybody's back on. Well, our videos have disappeared. Guys, please get off stage and go back on to get the videos working again. All right, this happens almost every time. We don't know why. Our webinar platform is failing us. All right, Luca, while you were speaking, we already got quite a few questions. So the first one is, whether do you think it's possible to develop a blue carbon project with a budget between 15 to 25K euros?
That's a very tough question. I would say it depends on the stage of the project. So if you have to start from zero, you just have, I don't know, an idea of it. Probably the money, it's a little bit low. Also, it depends in which area of the world we are speaking about, of course. But if, on the other hand, you are already like at some good stage in the sense that, I don't know, you already are implementing some conservation policy and you just need a certification or to implement what you are already doing, I think it could be enough.
I think Bernadette added in the chat that he's going to start from scratch, and it's a project in Spanish Mediterranean.
Well, if you send me an email, maybe, I don't know, we can continue the conversation after the webinar. I will just type my mail as well in the chat. But in that case, I mean, it's complicated to tell you, yeah, it's enough without knowing the project. But I think it's a good starting point for sure.
Thank you. Dawn, actually, your question is going to be answered during Ole's presentation, so stay tuned. Anna, all right, Luca, I'm going to have to read it out. It's a couple of sentences. Basically, do you also model the respiration of the sedimenting phytoplankton, diamods, and dinoflagellates? I'm sorry if I butchered that. I don't even know what any of that means. I hope you know. In the Baltic Sea, the massive phytoplankton algae bloom in the early spring is mostly respired, consuming all benthic oxygen as sediments and causing dead zones. Hence, the carbon fixed is released after sedimentation, resulting in an appropriate ±0 carbon budget. Not all ecosystems are like this, but do you consider this?
Yes, not me personally, of course, but the certification connected to the blue carbon credits we are working with also consider this feature, let's say. The reason why, let's say, in this area in Venice, it's easier to access to this type of data is because of the nature of the space where we are working. This part of lagoon are, let's say, closed and preserved since hundreds of years. So there is an availability of data way wider, especially when we speak about historical data. And so it's easier to compare present situation with, I don't know, 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Thank you, Luca. There is another question. Do you certify emission reductions in your projects?
Yes, it's also included in the certification.
Have you had any resistance from companies who aren't ready to speak publicly about their blue carbon initiatives? Is there a common reason for the resistance?
Yes, of course, I would say. Okay, there is, let's say, there could be different type of reason. Once, it's because they are not as popular as trees. So they are sometimes a little bit scared to be seen as, at least in Italy. So far, we are mostly working with Italian company, even though we are already negotiating also with some other European one. So they are just a little bit scared to be one of the first company to be talking about the topic. And that's, let's say, one good reason. The bad one is when they are maybe trying to hide something or just, offsetting without actual reduction plan connected to CO2 emission. And in that case, for us, it's pretty simple because we don't work with companies that behave like that. So we just say, I don't know, or you make the plan with us, or you can come back when you will have a plan.
Thank you. Going back to the example of seagrass, if there is no historical data of extent of seagrass, how would one determine the rate of degradation that's needed for any of the large standards like VERA for a conservation project?
I'm sorry, I really didn't understand too much the question, so I will read it again. Going back to
So is the question about establishing the rate of degradation if there is no historical data?
To me, for example, we are also working with Posidonia in Spain. We have a project which it's not yet about blue carbon. And the reason why we are not generating yet blue carbon is exactly because we don't have enough data. So I would say it depends on the team that is working on the project, because you could use some estimates. For example, if we're talking about the Mediterranean Sea, there are different type of estimation about the rate of degradation of, for example, Posidonia or seagrass in general. But that's not the way we work. We want actual data from the specific ecosystem in which we are working. And for this reason, for example, about this specific example, we are not yet certifying blue carbon from that, but we are, for example, selling the project to companies as a project that support the preservation and the mapping of Posidonia.
Are there any green bonds specific to blue carbon reduction?
That's a really good question. And to be honest, I don't want to answer incorrectly, so I will be very honest to say that I don't know. I think there should, but I don't know any. So yeah, sorry.
Tridip, we'll make sure to follow up with you in writing. Another question from Mir: how many companies are involved in blue carbon market in there?
Okay, it depends on at which level we are looking at it, in the sense that if we look at producers, so the one who, I don't know, project developer for blue carbon, in Europe at least, which is the market I know the best, let's say, there are some, especially, let's say, startup like ours, maybe similar, but not too many, I would say. And of course, also those big climate tech company and older are starting to also move in the sector of blue carbon. On the other hand, if we are looking at buyers, so companies who are actually buying blue carbon, it's difficult to give numbers, but for sure the number is quite low. And because I don't know, I think it was great that at some point we managed to teach to people that trees can be good for climate. But about blue carbon, and now it's a little bit complicated, because at least in Italy, at cultural level, most of the people think that trees can be the only way to, for example, offset or help ecosystem to absorb more CO2. While on the other hand, blue carbon project can be way more efficient. But I believe in the next 2-5 years, it's gonna increase, like the market will really increase. And that's one of the reasons why See the Change is working on the topic.
Thank you, Luca. There's one more question. We'll take it afterwards because we would like to switch to Ollie's presentation, as he's going to go over mangroves. Ollie, the floor is yours, and everybody in the audience. There will be a couple of polls launched during Ollie's presentation, so please watch out for that. Ollie, the stage is yours.
Hi everyone. Let's just go through the obvious technical challenge of sharing the screen. Did it work? Hello?
Yep.
Working.
All
yeah.
good.
Yeah, great. First of all, I'd just like to say, thank you to Mario and Luca for the excellent presentations. Blue carbon, I think, is just a fascinating area to look into. I just want to preface my presentation with, I'm not a blue carbon expert, but I am quite enthusiastic about mangroves, and we have been working on a few projects. So I just want to share with you some of the tools we've been designing, and showcase the platform a little bit at the end. So mangroves, I guess, probably the most famous of the blue carbon projects. So mangroves
funny thing, they're not a single species of plant. They are basically an ecosystem of highly adapted plants. They're sort of highly adapted to be very salt tolerant and to exist in specific habitats. And yeah, they're fantastically diverse, which can be a little bit of an issue for the remote sensing world. I think it was Doan's question regarding the difficulties with the diversity of blue carbon projects and how you need to take, having a scalable solution is tricky. I think that's probably the case for most project types, but I think it is certainly true that we do face some challenges with blue carbon given the variability around the world of ecosystems and the oceans and the seas. So so 16% of mangrove species are of conservation concern. They're found throughout the tropics. They're highly productive and they store a lot of carbon, and they're incredibly important habitats. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to run through these quite fast, but I'd say that these two references here are really useful if you want to do a deep dive into the state of the world's mangroves, and Global Mangrove Watch has some really useful mapping tools. So these are I used to spend some time in the mangroves in Singapore when I lived there, and just fantastic array of species and ecosystems and amazing animals in there. Probably the best animals there are, I'd say. So of course, this needs to be a priority. We protect the mangroves and we protect these incredible species. So back to carbon. So, we're talking from the perspective of carbon projects today. So, above ground biomass with mangroves. So because there's some differences with forest projects, and it's we have to consider that the mangroves are not just sort of forests in the sea or in the water. So we need to consider that actually a majority of the carbon stored in these ecosystems are stored in the soils and the sediments, and these can be as high as 1,000 megatons of carbon per hectare in some of these soils. And what we've seen is that the conversion of mangroves to, say, shrimp farms can result in the loss of 50% of the carbon stored in those soils. And that can be a considerable amount of carbon, and it can be more than the above ground biomass that you will sequester over the 25 years, 30 years of a project's lifetime in some cases. So stopping mangroves being cut down is a fantastic way to save carbon, and should be considered a priority. And also, degradation and pollution impacts the functioning of mangroves. Certainly seen that mangroves are unfortunately a big trap for plastics as well. And I think, this is something that we need to consider, that we need to maintain these habitats in as pristine condition as possible. Oops. Sorry, I don't know if anyone, just get rid of my calendar. Yep, and there's some tricky aspects to mangroves projects, especially restoration, where sometimes you have to restore the hydrology of a project, which has been disrupted by the implementation of shrimp farms on an area. So there are all kinds of things to consider. So, there are two types of mangrove projects. Reforestation and afforestation tend to be, I think, gaining in popularity. They seem to get higher carbon credit prices. Of course, there's these problems with restoring hydrology and sometimes, but again, as with sort of afforestation projects, some areas may not be appropriate for planting mangroves. And there are sort of mudflats and things which are really important sort of migration areas and important for wading birds and things which may not be the best place to plant with mangroves. So a proper assessment of the environmental conditions is required for mangrove projects. There's also protection and conservation. In the late 20th century, we saw really high rates of deforestation, especially in Southeast Asia. This has decreased significantly. So protection, it has decreased significantly, but protection still delivers really high carbon benefits just because of this irrecoverable carbon stored in the soils and the above ground biomass. So, and yeah, Plan Vivo and Vera are two of the certification bodies with methodologies. I had a really good question about seagrass and how to measure the historical change of seagrass in an ecosystem. So I think there's the Vera, was it VM003 is the methodology to look up there, and perhaps there's some insight in there as to how to detect seagrass change historically. So there's a huge amount of benefits to mangrove projects. Mitigation and adaptation. Not only does it store and sequester carbon, but it protects coastal ecosystems and people. So yeah, they provide sort of a natural barrier to extreme weather events. Obviously, the biodiversity is a big element of this. So one of the interesting things I was reading about was how mangroves actually protect a lot of the coral, which it protects it from sort of strong UV rays. So a lot of coral is actually hanging on around mangroves. Obviously, livelihoods and tourism. So mangroves are a big touristic draw, and we see that because of these increases in biodiversity, often the fish catch in that area often increases. Obviously, there's water quality improvements, and actually, it seems that a lot of the mangrove projects seem to have a big emphasis on community-based engagement and education, and yeah, all of these co-benefits, and so they tend to contribute to these sustainability goals very well. So they're very good projects in summary. This is just a quick slide to say some of the threats to mangroves. A huge part of this is the development of aquaculture, timber. I think some projects really struggle, funding projects struggle to find an appropriate amount of funding where there's coastal development, because obviously big hotels raise a lot of money. So having a high carbon offsetting price would be useful for that. And yeah, so we're seeing increasing threats to mangroves through sea level rise and erosion. So this is a nice picture from this nice report. That's worth reading. Yeah, so here's what it tends to look like. So you can highlight some of the fish farms in this area just using a water index, and then you have the mangroves around it. And then here's an area which is really subject to quite high erosion rates. So here it is in 2017, here it is in 2019, according to the Global Mangrove Watch data set. And this is something that we have on Orbify, and you can see the change in mangrove over time of this southern part of this island in Bangladesh. Just be aware that this chart is the data points in time are not consistent. So there's a big gap between 2010 and 2015, which is part of the Global Mangrove Watch data set. So we have released our templates on Orbify now. So I think if you are familiar with the Orbify platform, we had a simple forest monitoring tool presented as when you log into the app. We've now replaced that with specific templates for specific use cases. And we've developed a blue carbon mangrove tool. And part of this is our 10 by 10 spatial resolution annual mangrove monitoring tool, which goes from 2018 to 2023, so now. And that's to complement the historical mangrove extent, which we can do with the Global Mangrove Watch data set, which has a lower spatial resolution. So this is currently in development now. I'll show you how its current status in a minute. And we hope that this will be really useful for people. So we're really looking forward to hearing from people who want to look to use this tool and get some feedback on that. We also have a restorable area calculation, and an above ground biomass from 2 different data sets. One's from 2000 and the other one's 2018. So these 2019, I think. So these two can be complementary, but this one's slightly higher spatial resolution and specific to mangroves. We also have other indicators which might be useful. Obviously, we have quite a few biodiversity indices now, which go hand in hand with the biodiversity benefits of mangroves. So yes, this is what it looks like now. If you go onto the dashboard, you can either pick from templates or build a template yourself. Here's a selection of the kind of templates we have on the platform. If you select blue carbon, we have this this template here. And hopefully, please let me know if you don't see a change. This is what it looks like. Can someone on the Orbify team just say yes or no that you can see the screen change?
Yep, we can see
Great,
it.
thanks. So
Oh no, we're still on your slides though.
You're still on the slides.
Yeah.
This?
Okay, now we can see that
Great,
screen.
thanks. So this is what the template looks like, the basic template. So we have the Global Mangrove Watch dataset, which shows the mangrove cover over time. We have gain and loss maintained statistics, the area of the project, the mangrove change over time. You can see that it's slightly, it's apparently increasing on this project, but I'm not sure if this data, the quality of this data is variable in different places, and I think this was true of probably any global data set dealing with mangroves especially, but I think we've made some improvements on this. And then we have a vegetation health indicators, EVI, NDVI, and some water quality indicators. And finally, we have some habitat monitoring, and we can have biodiversity intactness and forest integrity index as well for this. So this is just a quick, so I'll share this new tab. So here's another mangrove monitoring template that's in development. And we have the Global Mangrove Watch layer here, which shows the mangrove cover in 2020. And you can see that the blue here is water. It does a relatively good job of mapping the mangroves in this, this area in Kenya. But we can see that the new Orbify layer does a lot better job. And we can see some of these estuaries leading out to the sea here, to this bay. And so we have improved upon the Global Mangrove Watch data set, which has a slightly higher resolution as well. And so we have this change in mangrove cover. Just be aware that this y-axis makes these changes look a lot bigger than they might be because they're scaled like that. So yeah, again, we have the change in mangrove area given the inputs, date input at the top. So that's over a couple of years. Oops, where have I gone? We have the canopy height as well. So quite small trees. Mangroves can get tall, very tall. So it can be, so I think the highest ones are around 60 meters in height. So these are quite small according to this. Then the restoration area. So if you select a larger time range, you can have a look at the. Oh, sorry, no. This tells you how much mangrove can be restored based on the previous maximum mangrove cover in an area. So if we had a high amount of mangrove loss in the following years, this would increase. So you can have an idea of what's possible to restore based on historical mangrove cover. And then we have the Global Mangrove Watch, which we advise to use as to look at historical deforestation rates. And then finally, we have the above ground biomass. So this is quite low for mangroves in this project, and they're quite small. So this may be this particular mangrove species. So this is our new template, and we're looking forward to providing this to our users and getting feedback on how it performs on their projects. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you and yeah, get that feedback and start applying this to real projects. So that's the end. I think we're quite over the end of the webinar, so I hope everyone stayed with me to the end. So I'll stop sharing now.
Totally. I'm impressed. I know you've been working on the model for quite a bit by now. So Diego has a follow-up. So he's the one who's had the question about being able to do mangrove monitoring in South Africa, and he also has a follow-up question: what kind of inputs do you need to come up with those nice dashboards for Blue Carbon project, specifically conservation?
Sorry, I the internet cut out and I had to refresh my page, so I missed the first part of what you said. I think
that's okay. So a question from Diego, who is the one who had the question about mangroves monitoring in South Africa. He's asking what kind of inputs do you need to come up with for those nice dashboards for Blue Carbon project, specifically conservation?
All we need is your geographical boundaries. So we just need a shapefile or just the boundaries. You can draw it on the map even using the app. So this is all. We don't need any input from you for this. Although if you have data, it's really useful to compare with what we have because we're using remote data sets and global data sets. So the accuracy of these metrics that we provide are quite variable in some areas. So yeah, having some validation data or something to compare against on the ground is also extremely valuable. But just to have a look, this tool's really for that first look at a mangrove project. Yeah, we just need to know where it is. So.
Diego, you can go also to orbify.com and start a free account for yourself. And you can also get in touch with us through the website as well. There is a link at the very top to schedule a call with us, so we can also demo the platform specifically to you. And Diego saying, and I see you already have a project in Colombia. I have one mangroves project in Colombia in the Southwest region.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, if you reach out to us, it would be great to run that with our platform and see what we get. See if yeah, please reach.
There are a couple more questions. How to measure carbon stock in mangrove, particularly from soil below ground biomass?
Yeah, I think measuring above ground carbon in mangroves is quite a challenge. I think some of them are quite inaccessible. So the traditional forest measurements where you go and measure them physically are difficult. So sort of LiDAR is a really useful methodology, mounted on a UAV or something. And soil is also very difficult. Now, I'm not sure how, I think it's probably the same way you measure normal soils by taking samples. But this is part of one of the things we are missing. And given that soils are really important in mangroves, we don't have a data set which describes the carbon in the soils in the mangrove. I think that's a very difficult thing to do with remote sensing. I don't know if my colleagues who are the blue carbon experts here have anything to add on that, but feel free to jump in. I hope that was some sort of answer anyway. See that.
All right, we'll take one more question as we're like a little bit over time at this point. So what are the main reasons for mangrove erosion in Bangladesh? If any of the speakers would like to take that question.
I just presented we had a quick look at I was trying to replicate another a paper on the erosion going on, so that the erosion we saw in that Bangladesh, in the island on Bangladesh, is facing the ocean side, and it's due to sea level rise and extreme weather events. And so you see a sort of the mangrove cover just recede along the island quite a lot. I think it's something as sort of 200 meters a year or something really quite scary. So yeah, it's funny. Do you think mangroves both act as a defense to coastal extremes, right? But they're also at risk from them as well. So we can't rely on mangrove planting to save us from water world.
All right, thank you, Oli. We have, I think, a couple more questions. We'll answer them in writing as we don't want to keep you guys waiting anymore. We know we're a little bit over time, so we apologize for that. Hopefully you enjoyed everything that we went over in this webinar. Carlos just dropped in everybody's contact information in the chat. So if you want to connect with any of the speakers specifically, you have their LinkedIn links as well as the websites of their companies. Grazie Luca, hvala Mario. Thank you, Oli. Thank you for coming to the webinar and presenting all that amazing information. Everyone, if you're looking forward to receiving the recording is gonna come out tomorrow. So you'll have that ready if you would like to forward it to any of your colleagues. Thanks again for coming to our webinar. And our next webinar is going to happen 4 weeks from now. It's going to be an overview of all the different tools and applications when it comes to Earth observation for climate projects. It's going to be released, the date and time and the link for registration is going to be released early next week. So stay tuned for that, and thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
See you guys. Pozdrav svima, bok.
Bye. Bye.